Thank you for joining us for the Alameda County Childcare and COVID-19 Business Relief for Childcare webinar. Today is Friday, April 3rd, 2020. Before we get started, we'd like to go over some housekeeping items and functionality for our attendees. This webinar is being recorded. All attendees are muted throughout the presentation. The chat box is disabled, but please submit all of your questions through the Q&A chat box, which I'll show you how to access. First, find the black toolbar at the bottom of your screen. You'll see chat, which is disabled, and next to that is the Q&A icon. Click on that to access the Q&A box. You can view all questions from other participants on the All Questions tab. You can also ask your own question by typing it in the question box at the bottom. If you would like to submit your question anonymously, check the small Send Anonymously button at the bottom. If you submit sending anonymously, we will not be able to follow up with you offline if needed. You can view all your questions on the My Questions tab on the right. Now I'd like to hand you off to our moderator, Kim.
Hi, can you hear me okay, JJ?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kim Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of Bananas, and I hope you and your families are well, and I hope you can take a few moments every day to practice some self-care. I'll be your moderator for today's webinar, and we will share information with you about resources that are available to you as a small business owner. Joining me today are three panelists, each covering their specialty and area of expertise to address many of the questions you have asked. Our first speaker is Nathan Diaz. Nathan is the tax director at the Henry Levi Group. It's a CPA firm based in Oakland, specializing in small and medium businesses. He has over 14 years of experience in accounting, and his primary focus has been on tax compliance and planning, and works with nonprofit organizations, partnerships, corporations, estates and trusts, and high net worth individuals. Our second speaker is Darcy DeCoit. Darcy is a sole proprietor, like many of you, and is the president and owner of One Resource Consulting, a boutique consulting firm that provides HR services and training to small and mid-sized businesses, specializing in legal compliance and employee relations. Darcy started her consulting business with a passion for helping business owners establish more efficient HR processes. Her goal is to teach owners and managers to be more proactive in their employment practices and mitigate litigation risk. Our final speaker this afternoon is Miles Armstead. Miles is a wealth management private banker for Fremont Bank. As a private banker, Miles' primary goal is to provide exceptional customer service to his clients by exceeding their expectations. Additionally, he strives to provide value to his clients through professionalism and expertise through his actions and those of his team. He wants to ensure his clients feel well taken care of and know who to go to for any advice. And finally, I'd like to thank Anthony Barr. He's with us today, but he won't be one of our panelists, but he brought this great panel together to answer your questions and concerns. Anthony is a member of Bananas Board of Directors, and he called me on Monday to ask, how can he help? I mentioned the numerous webinars that had taken place and that no one was providing answers to the many business questions providers had. He said, without hesitation, I can do that. So here we are today. Next slide. So this is our agenda for today. First, Nathan will talk about the tax implications, including the stimulus check I'm sure you've all heard about. Next, Darcy will address unemployment insurance, and Miles will talk about some of the relief programs. And then I'll wrap up with some resources for you. Before I turn it over to Nathan, I just want to emphasize that these things are moving really quickly and they're changing every day. All of these programs may not be fully implemented or have all of the kinks worked out. The information shared today is what we know of as of today. So Let's turn the screen over so we can see our panelists and they can say hello. But we're going to get started first with, if I get my screen together, we're going to start first with Nathan. So Nathan, the CARES stimulus package and taxes are two topics that apply to most. Can you describe the stimulus check that most Americans will receive and some of the tax considerations they should know about?
Of course, yeah. Thank you, Kim, for the introduction, and I just want to say hi to everybody out there, and I hope you all are hanging in there. So the main item that's received a lot of news coverage is the stimulus checks, otherwise known as the recovery rebate credit. Those credits will be based, or I'll just call it the stimulus check from now on. The stimulus check will be based on either your 2019 tax return, if that's already been filed, or your 2018 tax return, if your 2019 tax return hasn't been completed yet. The amount of the stimulus check is $1,200 for each eligible individual, up to $2,400 for two individuals filing a joint return, as well as $500 for each qualifying child under 16. The credit begins to phase out at a certain level of income. So if you're using either your 2018 or 2019 tax returns, the income limits are the same. If you have less than $150,000 of gross income, or you can just think of it as total income for a joint filer, you can expect to receive the full amount of the stimulus check. If you have less than $1,000 or $112,500 as a head of household, you can expect to receive the full amount of the stimulus check. And if you have less than $75,000 as a single filer, you can expect to receive the full amount of the stimulus check. These phase, if you have any more than those, or a greater amount of income than any of those three just listed, you still may receive a partial benefit from the stimulus check, but it will not be the full amount. If you have income of 150 to 198,000 as a joint filer, you'll still receive some benefit, but you won't receive the full amount. Anything over 198,000 of gross income, you won't receive any benefit. Head of household, that range is 112,500 to 136,500, and for single filers, it's 75,000 up to 99,000. If no 2019 or 2018 and 2019 tax return has been prepared, depending on the circumstances of why you haven't filed a return in the past, you may need to do something in order to get the stimulus check. If the reason you haven't filed those returns is because your primary source of income is Social Security or railroad benefits, you will not need to file a tax return, as the IRS will be able to get those specific benefit statements from the Social Security Administration, and will base your stimulus check on that. If you haven't filed a 2018 or 2019 tax return just because it's delinquent and you haven't gotten around to it, you will need to file at least a 2018 tax return or a 2019 tax return, whichever is the easiest or quickest for you to file, as soon as possible. There's not a huge rush on that, other than the rush to want to get your funds. If you end up filing later on in the year, maybe as some of these restrictions on going out and meeting with a tax preparer or being able to get in contact with the tax preparer, as those start to ease, if you file your tax return, say, over the summer or later in the fall, you will still receive a benefit once your tax return is filed. So there's no cutoff limit as long as you do it this year. It doesn't appear that what they're calling the 2020 recovery rebate will need to be paid back for any reason. So if you receive an amount based on your 2018 tax return and your 2019 income ends up being higher for some reason, you don't need to worry about paying back the stimulus check as if you didn't qualify. It's one directional only. Once you receive the check, that's what you're going to get. If you don't typically use direct deposit and haven't used direct deposit on returns in the past, we would encourage you to do so on your most recent filing if you haven't filed 2019 yet. if you've already filed 2019 and you still want to get your direct deposit information into the IRS, they're supposed to be coming out with a website in the coming weeks, which will allow you to provide that information to the IRS so that it will, in order to speed up the timing of your stimulus check. Otherwise, if you just wait on a paper check, it could be a matter of months as opposed to the 3 weeks that's been cited as the amount of time it would take for a direct deposit. There's a lot of resources out there for individuals who need to file a tax return, a 2019 or 2018 tax return. The IRS website has numerous links to where you can, go to file either a free tax return on something like TurboTax or a cheap tax return, for a nominal fee that you can do something online. So those are resources that you may want to consider. Anything else on the stimulus checks?
Not on the stimulus checks. I've heard that there has been an extension of the tax filing deadlines, as well as a relaxation of tax rules involving operating losses. Can you talk to that briefly?
Yes. So all payments and filing deadlines related to individual filers and businesses that would normally file on April 15th have been extended until July 15th without any penalties or interest being applied. So essentially the 4/15 deadline has now become, or the April 15th deadline has now become July 15th. So everyone has a little bit of extra time, which is good as we try and figure out some of these new rules, and no penalties or interest related to taking advantage of that. If you still do need additional time to file your tax return, you can then apply by July 15th for the usual extension, which is until October 15th. Related to the loss rules that you referenced, under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which was the tax act passed by the Trump administration a couple of years ago, the 2018 for tax years after 2017, so 2018, 2019 onwards, if you incurred a net operating loss in your business, meaning you had negative income essentially, you were not allowed to carry that back to previous years as you previously were allowed to. So if you experienced a loss, you had to keep carrying that loss forward until you had a year with income to offset it. Those provisions have now been waived. So if you did have a net operating loss, say in 2018, and you were forced to carry it forward, well, now with the CARES Act, they're reinstituting the 5-year carryback. So you can carry those losses back. Say if you had a loss again in 2018 and you had maybe a good amount of income in 2017, you can carry that loss back to 2017 and claim a refund and get some of your money back. Previously, those losses under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act had also been limited to 80% of income. They're now allowed 100%. So there's no limitation on the amount of losses that you can carry back 5 years.
So if that is news to some people, they can check in with their tax advisor, whoever did their taxes, they can probably help them with that.
Correct. And if you are unsure if you have a net operating loss, your tax return should have some kind of a statement in there that would indicate that you have that net operating loss carryover. But the best thing to do would be to consult a tax advisor if you have one.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Thanks a lot. We're going to move on to Darcy. Darcy is going to talk about unemployment insurance. Darcy, eligibility and accessing unemployment insurance for sole proprietors has been one of the most frequently asked questions by our providers. Can you share what the current plans are for expanding eligibility for unemployment insurance?
Yes. So with the new CARES Act, which the government recently passed, they did expand, some of the unemployment benefits options. And one of them is that they included gig workers, independent contractors, self-employed, freelancers, and the like. So that they're saying that would make them eligible. But that there's more information that needs to go into it to make sure that they truly are eligible. That still is, you know, they're still working out the guidelines. They haven't officially released any guidelines on that. So a lot of things like the state would be sort of still referring to like, okay, let's wait on what the federal government says. Whereas right now the federal government is saying, well, right now we're going to base it on whatever your state decides. So it's sort of up in the air right now. And so we can't make any guarantees either way about how this is going to play out. But yes, for sole proprietors, they would be eligible under what they're saying. But what I'm reading from EDD, the California's unemployment department, is that they are sort of basing their information on previous rulings on self-employed individuals, and they haven't, you know, they don't know what to do with the updates quite yet. But they even have a COVID, you know, Q&A section on this, and when it asks the question about that, they do kind of indicate you would have had to already apply for elective unemployment insurance. And very few people know about that, and very few people would probably have done that. And so right now there's a question as to whether that would make you ineligible if you didn't have that elective coverage, because, you know, hopefully the government will look at that and go, well, that doesn't seem, what would be the whole purpose of us offering it, because it's you know, not going to be available to most people in that category. But in California, they have some of the most relaxed guidelines around who is eligible, and especially right now. What they're suggesting is that everybody should just apply. If they feel like they want to try to get unemployment, they should just apply for the unemployment. And they'll do is they'll deal with it on a case-by-case basis. So if they need to reach out to the person to say, okay, we need more details, they're ideally are going to work that out with you. And you know, unfortunately, you might not find out until then. I did attempt to apply as a sole proprietor, as a self-employed person, and I wanted to see if it would stop me at any point and say, nope, you can't go any further. You don't qualify. It did not. And so now I didn't press submit, but it didn't, there was no red flags on that if I were to attempt to apply. So I believe you can apply and it won't hurt your chances later. So it is worth giving it a shot.
And you mentioned before, when you had tried, if someone had tried to do that before, the system would have stopped them from going any further.
Well, in certain circumstances, the system will stop you. Like even for example, if somebody at a company has a work sharing program where they're saying, you know, well, the hours are cut, we're still paying, but, you know, unemployment should cover the rest. And there's a certain form you have to fill out. And if the employer fills out that form and you say, yes, I got it, they'll say, okay, go no further, we'll have to call you. And if you say, no, my employer didn't give me that form, then they let you go forward with the application. So it's situations like that where they can stop you at some point and be like, go no further, it doesn't apply to you. So like I said, that so far, they're not stopping people who are self-employed from applying.
Okay, and I've heard people talking about an extra $600 of unemployment insurance. How does, if someone is eligible and receives unemployment insurance, how do they get that extra $600?
Right, so eligible people they'll get, you know, regularly up to $450 a week based on their income. And this is, you know, at this point, it's for up to 39 weeks. So it's a very long period of time. And what they're going to do is add on, based on the Federal CARES Act, an additional $600 on top of what you would be offered normally from EDD. So that's going to happen through the end of July. So, you know, it's for a 4-month period. They will tack on the $600. You don't have to apply for it. It's just if you're applying for unemployment and you get it, they're going to just tack on the extra $600 to everybody.
Well, that's good news. So also I wanted to mention, many providers have indicated that they have low enrollment, so less revenue. So they're not closed completely. And they want to know, are they eligible for unemployment insurance? And then we also have providers that have closed completely because they either have no children attending or because they're in a high risk group and fear of becoming ill. Will they be eligible for unemployment insurance?
Right. So generally speaking, unemployment insurance is available to anyone who's lost work. So whether you fully lost work or you partially lost work, you would be eligible for unemployment.
Okay, great. So also, as you may know, many of these providers are employers as well, and some have had to let their workers either be furloughed or they laid them off. Can you provide any guidance to providers about what they can tell their staff about accessing unemployment insurance?
Yes, and this is another one that, as we keep mentioning, it's very fluid. They're updating information on this sometimes on a daily basis, so it's very hard to keep track of. But with the new Families First Act, which was also enacted recently, they're offering certain things to employees. So if you do have employees, you would be required to provide them with the option for paid sick leave that's considered emergency paid sick leave and emergency FMLA. And so this is different than, say, the normal California accrued sick. This is an additional bucket. It took effect on April 1st. So it's basically going to apply from April 1st for 2 weeks, right? So it's not retroactive. But what would happen is that you have employees with certain qualifications that are COVID related, then they are able to take this sick time. And if they have their child's school closed, which everywhere around here does, and they have to care for their child at home, and so they're unable to work, then they would be eligible to take this time, and then they get paid 2/3 of their salary during that 10 weeks of the 12 weeks of this special FMLA coverage. But yeah, and then the paid sick leave is going to depend on how many hours they worked, and the reason for taking the leave. So there's very specific reasons of, being officially quarantined by a healthcare professional, being having symptoms, and, then you could be caring for someone who has symptoms or who has been officially quarantined, and you could use the sick time also for the caring for your child whose school's closed. So those are all kind of requirements that they don't necessarily cover the shelter-in-place order on its own. So if they're just not working, and so that you just don't have any work for them at this point, it's saying that they would not be eligible for this reason, right? So it has to be for an official type of quarantine order. And so they're not saying it is quite the same thing, although it's been debated. But right now, it's kind of where it's at. Now, when someone is furloughed, that means that they are still an employee, right? If you have health benefits for them, you would continue their health benefits. But it's a little different from laying off, where a layoff is basically you have to terminate the employee and you have ended your employment relationship. Therefore, you don't owe them anything. None of this would have to be paid out. Sick leave is not paid out. FMLA is not paid out. So that's something that you would just be able to sort of have a clean cut and not be responsible for these things, if that would be hard on your budget. But yeah, another thing that they're offering is for people who have under 50 employees, which most people do, that they can apply for an exemption to having to give these leaves because it would cause their company a hardship. So it's very easy to prove that it's going to be a hardship, but they don't have an official application process for this, so it's kind of hard to know for sure. But they say just document the reasons, document the fact that you have, you have no business, you have no money coming in, and therefore there's no way you could pay people for this much time, which is can be up to 2 weeks of pay for full-time employees. So that's something that right now there's not a lot you can do other than just sort of keep track of it and hope that means that you qualify. But most people, I feel like in the situation of, the type of people we're talking about in their small businesses, of having, daycare centers, that it's probably going to qualify, so that you don't have to worry about it. But, so if someone is actually sick, with COVID, then you would have to, pay for them. But once you decide to say, I'm just going to furlough everybody, it stops that day. So if you decided to furlough people as of today, you may have owed them, if it was a qualifying reason for the 1st through the 3rd, but then as of tomorrow, you're off the hook. So you can at any point, if you want to say, I'm going to lay people off or I'm going to furlough them because I can't handle this, you do have the right to do that, and you would no longer be obligated to pay for any of these things.
Okay, thank you, Darcy. And just kind of to reiterate that for the unemployment applications, there's no harm in putting an application in. Just try it and go for it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, let's move on to Miles. Miles, the other most frequently asked question is, what relief programs can I access to help me maintain or save my business? I understand that many of the programs are still forming and that some of the implementation rules are in flux. Can you share with our providers what you know about the announced programs and how they can best prepare to take advantage of them?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Miles Armstead, Fremont Bank. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. The one that everybody's been talking a lot about is the SBA, Small Business Administration 7A program, and it's PPP, which stands for Payment Protection Program or Payroll Protection Program. So the idea is that that's a really great program to allow employers to be able to rehire the employees, get money back into the employees' pockets, so that they don't lose skilled workers. Also, it's going to allow them to let's see. One other thing here is assist with other operational expenses as well. So some of the things that it's going to cover would be utilities, rent, or a mortgage if you actually happen to own the building, as well as that payroll, the benefits for the employees. So those are some of the important factors of what it's going to cover for you.
Okay. So each of the programs will have different requirements. What documents do you recommend providers assemble and have at the ready so they can apply for any funding packages as they're offered?
Yeah, great question. So the idea is that in order to qualify, you are a business that's been in business before February 15th or February 20th of 2020. You're under 500 employees. So that counts for a lot of the businesses out there. And then as far as what are some of the qualifying factors for it, so we're going to be looking at the average monthly payroll for the whole year. We're going to multiply that by 2.5, and that's going to be what the business can qualify for in order to use those funds for the said purposes. There will be a deferment on the first 6 to 12 months of paying it. And one of the really big factors on this as well is that as long as you're using it for qualified purposes, it should be 100% forgiven. So this is really a relief kind of bailout type of program. It's not designed so that you have to pay it back. If in fact there's anything that you use it for that's considered non-qualified, the rate that I've learned, it looks like is going to be 1%. And it's also going to be over a 10-year term as far as what I understand. So you would have a long time to pay it back, only at 1%, if in fact there's anything that you're going to end up owing after all is said and done.
Okay, thanks. And I know when I was talking to you earlier, you mentioned that a lot of business owners are contacting their personal banker to help them guide them through this process, help them navigate. So if I don't have a personal banker, how do I access and apply for these programs?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, I can only speak for Fremont Bank. I don't know as much about what all the other banks are doing, but the way we're doing things internally are you're not able to do it through the branch. You can call in. You can go to our website at fremontbank.com. However, one of the biggest factors is you're going to need to go through your bank. So if you don't have a banking relationship with, let's say, Fremont Bank, you're not going to want to reach out to Fremont Bank. You want to go directly to the bank that you have a relationship with, and then they should be able to help you. Now, one other thing I want to add to this is that one of the challenges is there's been an influx in the applications since this process started just midnight of Thursday. And so are the banks able to handle the demand of all these requests coming at the same time? And what I understand is that Fremont Bank, we are starting to work on the process of accepting the applications. However, it's a fluid situation. And so not sure how many we've actually started to work on, but I do know the application is out there. Some of the other banks, some of the bigger banks, I understand, I don't think they're even able to accept the applications yet. So the process, again, is very fluid, and we just ask that all of the business owners be patient with the banks as we try to navigate this process.
Okay, thanks. We kind of got through some of this pretty quickly, so that gives me a chance to look at some of the questions that have come up online. And so I'll pick out some that seem to be applying to many folks. One person asked, I tried to fill out an application on EDD for unemployment, and it's asking which type of childcare work comes under. So I guess there's a type of business you need to click on, and they want to know which category does childcare work fall under?
Yeah, I did notice that it wants to ask what your professional, what your career is, basically, and it'll even ask like two things, what you do, because the main point they're asking that, I think, is because they want to know, if you're going to look for work, what you will we be able to do. But I don't think that's as important, so they can select. I didn't even have an exact match to what I do, so I just selected similar things, because in the end they're going to want to talk to you anyway. Okay.
I think this one will be for you, Nathan, and I'm just going to read it. This year I switched from sole proprietorship, Schedule C for tax purposes to single owner LLC, and I'm now under payroll, W-2 employee plus owner of LLC. Am I entitled to EDD unemployment insurance? If not, is there any help for SBAs as family child care service providers for the time we shut down because of COVID? So it's kind of an EDD and a tax question.
I think that's more of a Darcy question. It would sound like you would still qualify for, I think they're asking more about unemployment benefits, which isn't really my strong suit. Do you have an opinion on that, Darcy?
So their concern is that because they're, what they do, an S corp?
No, it sounds like actually they're still going to be filing on a Schedule C either way, because a single member LLC is still a Schedule C 1040 unless they make a proactive election to be an S corporation or something else.
Right. So it did look like they were, I heard they're going to be asking for Schedule C. But when I did the application process, it didn't get to that. So I don't know if they're going to ask you later for your Schedule C, but it didn't ask me during the application process. But I did read that was something that they would ask for.
And then I think the second part of that question was kind of what was the SBA providing in terms of loans for sole proprietorships. And I think did Miles hop off the call? Looks like Miles might have hopped off the call. He would be better suited to answer this, but my understanding is that sole proprietors will be or may be eligible for the PPP, the triple P loan, based on their self-employment earnings.
Okay. Let's see. I saw some other questions. People were asking whether or not if they apply to one program, does that disqualify them from applying to other programs? For instance, if I've applied for unemployment, does that prevent me from applying to PPP or an SBA loan or program?
As far as I know, it's not related regarding the loans.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm aware of is there are certain payroll tax credits which you may be able to take advantage of, employee retention payroll tax credits, and if you take the triple P loan, you're not eligible for the credits, and vice versa. If you take the credits, you're not eligible for the triple P loan. But I'm not sure about unemployment and the loans. I haven't seen anything about that.
Yeah, I think I heard that about the credits as well.
There's a question here. Is the extra $600 per month or per week?
So yeah, the payments that EDD provides are weekly.
So it's the extra 600 per week.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Though there has been some question as to whether or not, that could take them over what their original income was. And again, that's not specifically in the law or anything. They haven't, set those guidelines yet. But I did read somewhere that it said it's not going to be over 100%. It's not going to exceed 100% of your income, but that's yet to be seen.
Okay. Here's a question. Should I still apply for unemployment even if I zero out on my income and didn't end up paying taxes? I'm not sure I really understand that question.
It's not, I don't think it's really related to the taxes. It's what they're going to ask you for is your income. And I did read that it might be gross income, but again, a lot of this is based on old information. So they're really going to have to come up with special circumstances for this, because this is an exception to the rule that they're providing this right now. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about how that affects with the taxes. So when they say zero, that was saying they were making zero, or?
I read it verbatim, so I really can't.
Oh, yeah.
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 Hi,
They'll
Miles.
have to earn something in order to
Right.
get unemployment. Yeah.
Okay. Miles, there were a couple of questions that we wanted to share with they said, oh no, that's a Miles question. There was a question about whether or not if somebody is accessing, say, the PPP program, does that prevent them from accessing another relief program? Is it an either or can they do both?
So I have heard nothing out there that says that you cannot try to apply for many things at the same time. A lot of it, from my understanding, is because there's different purposes. So, I mean, the payment protection program or payroll protection, whichever term you want to use, is really designed to get the money back into the employee's hands, right? And also help the business keep the operations going. Some of these other relief programs, it sounds like they could have different, they could be more disaster relief related, maybe helping you with loan payments, things of that nature. So this has a broader context as far as how it can potentially help the business stay afloat for however long that money lasts them.
Thank you. Here's a question here. People without social security numbers, can they apply for EDD?
No.
Okay. Okay, here's a question. If an employee files for unemployment, how will that affect an employer who has applied for payroll protection? I applied for disaster loan assistance. Should I still apply for unemployment?
I think that sounds like a similar question to earlier. They're saying, can I get both, say, the PPP and unemployment at the same time? Is that what it looks like?
Yeah, I read it verbatim. Unfortunately, I can't really qualify it anymore.
Yeah,
I think this is another question for you, Darcy. It says, if employees have been furloughed before April 1st, can they use this sick time?
Right. If you have employees and you furlough them at any time, then it's because of lack of work, right? And for whatever reason, that just disqualifies them from this leave. So if you were to furlough them prior to April 1st, then you would have not owed them it at all. If you had done it as of, say, April 3rd, then you would have had to owe them for the 1st through the 3rd. Similar to laying someone off, that would be sort of the last day, and then the next day it's all gone because it's not paid out or owed to them.
Okay. And I think this is an easy one. it says, when you want to apply for EDD, do you use the same link UI? So I think it's the same portal.
As of now, it is. It's yet to be seen if they're going to create something unique, but right now, that's where it is. Yeah, they've actually had the ability for people to apply, based on self-employment for a while now, but based on the original ruling on this, it was specific to people who had elected, had done the elective UI. So you would have had to already applied that prior to this happening.
Okay, I'm gonna do a couple more questions, and it says, I heard on the news that the president said, if you apply for EDD by March 27th, they'll receive 100% of their salary. Is that true?
I think this is referring to the bill that was passed, that once the president passed it, that offered the additional $600. And that can create the ability for people to be at 100%, but it depends on what they were making. Because higher earners, it's never, if it doesn't ever exceed $10.50 a week, there's going to be people who make more money than that, and they're never going to get quite that amount. But then there's going to be people who were lower earners, and that is the question: is is that $600 able to take them over what their original income is? We don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But what's going to happen is EDD will plan on saying, here's how much we would have normally given you based on your income. We give you X amount. It does not, it's anywhere between $40 and $450. And then from there, that $600 is just tacked right on top of it. You don't even have to apply extra for it. And that's as far as it says right now.
Okay. My screen's saying that I'm mute. Can you guys hear me?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, all right. Another question is, how do I furlough people? Is there a special paperwork?
No, I mean, you do want to notify your employees that you're furloughing them. You need to definitely talk about that in writing. Maybe a change in status form might also be necessary. When you furlough them, you do want to give an end date, even if it's an end date you're not sure about. You could say that it ends on May 3rd, because that's what we know. And you can even say subject to change based on a government order or something like that. But yeah, that's as far as right now, is that you're just sort of notifying them that they're being furloughed. It's not something they apply for, with EDD. It's not an option on there, furloughed. It's more saying that there is no work available. And so, but it's more like a classification on your status internally, not so much it's any kind of application thing.
Thank you. This is a related question, I think, to the other one, but I want to read it. Can I use my ITN since I don't have a social security number? And that's all that she said. I don't know if that was for unemployment or to apply for programs.
Right. ITN is sort of an alternative to the social security number. It doesn't necessarily qualify people for everything, so I can't say for sure if that would work. I think somebody would have to try it.
Okay. And this one, I think you mentioned, but let me just mention it. You did talk about it, but it seems like someone had some problems. I am unclear on where to go to apply for unemployment as a self-employed childcare provider with no employees. I tried going to the EDD site and could not do it there. It was only for those who are employed by another. So it sounds like that might be a problem accessing systems. Do you have any?
Well, like I said, I went on yesterday. I pretended to apply, and it did allow me to apply. That is exactly where you would apply, the same place. You just go to the EDD website. You go to do an unemployment claim, and you have to go through the whole process of registering and then starting the claim. It'll ask you tons of questions. At one point, what it'll ask you is, have you worked in the past 18 months? Because the next question is for who, and how much were you paid? So when you say no, there is a little disclaimer sort of at the top that just says, like, this would not apply to self-employed individuals. Ignore that. right? Because it still allows you to go forward after you've said that. And then, you know, there's also an option to claim yourself as your last employer. So I did mess around with that, and it allows me to say I'm my last employer. But, you know, so you do have to just sort of make an attempt right now. I did notice since the last time I looked at the unemployment, the application process, they added for COVID.
We lost Darcy's audio. Okay, let me, until she reconnects, let me go to a question. It says, can I apply for PPP if I have no employees? I think that's a mild question.
Yes, you can. So the idea is that PPP is designed to cover independent contractors as well as W-2 employees, self-employed people. So you do not have to have and other employees. You could be the only employee, and that still would cover you. The one thing I did not mention though earlier is that if you are the only employee, and let's say you may be a high earner, since if you're the only one for the business, it's covering up to $100,000 when you're using the calculation for the payroll multiplier. So in other words, if that person's the only one in the business, and let's say they make $150,000, we're going to be looking at $100,000 on top of the other things they can include in their calculation to determine the average monthly payroll times the 2.5. And actually, Nathan, I'm assuming that being on the CPA side, that you probably have been helping clients to calculate what that would look like. I'm thinking, is that true?
That's true. I was actually going to ask you a question about that. What does the bank need in terms of substantiation for the self-employment earnings from, say, someone who has a Schedule C or someone who receives a K-1 from a partnership that reflects self-employed earnings? They can't really show the last 12 months of that if they haven't filed a tax return. So are you just asking for an income statement, or what do you need to prove the last 12 months of self-employed earnings if you don't have a tax form for that 12-month period?
That's a really good question. I'll be honest, I'm not sure, because on my end, all I'm doing is collecting the indication of interest, and it has a very few questions. The only thing it asks regarding it only asks for the 6-month average monthly payroll.
Okay.
And then once they actually do the application, then it's going to go into the full-blown application. But I know Anthony has already done the application, so I'm assuming he might know the answer to that question.
Okay, I'll follow up with him.
Okay, there is a question here. Can you talk a bit more about the economic injury disaster loan emergency advice?
So I'm assuming that's the one that's EIDL?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so EIDL, I don't know as much about, because from a banking perspective, we haven't really been supporting that one as far as when the applications come in. What I've been told, though, from a bookkeeper I work with, is that she had a lot of clients with handling those applications. It's through SBA Direct. That's what I was told from her. The amount that they can qualify is up to $10,000. And if that same business owner decides to also qualify for the PPP program, in the calculations, let me double check what it says here. I believe what you do is you take the average monthly payroll, you multiply it by 2.5, and then I think you add on the amount that you qualify for the EIDL. I believe that is a correct calculation. But again, this is based on what I know as of right now.
Right. And you brought up a good point, because there are some programs you have to apply through the bank, and then some that are directly with SBA.
Yes, there are a few that are directly SBA. SBA Relief and the EIDL are definitely directly to the SBA. The other thing is that if any of our listeners have any SBA loans existing in your business, that also would be, well, you can go directly to the SBA, or you can go through your lender that helped you qualify for that loan that's SBA, and they should be able to guide you on what you need to do, because they are, the SBA or the bank through the SBA is offering relief on those as well, as far as payments on those loans.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Here, this one's for you, Darcy, I think. It says, I am center-based, meaning they're a center-based childcare provider, and I laid off workers. Should I expect my unemployment rate to increase substantially? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, that's something that has been a big concern, that everybody is having to lay off mass amounts of people, which we've never seen happen like this before. It's technically, yeah, it will affect your unemployment rate.
Okay.
And I don't know if down the line they might decide to say, okay, maybe we can forgive some of this, maybe we can cut people some slack, but nothing's been mentioned about that yet.
Okay, I've been scrolling through these questions, and many of them we've already answered. Here's one that says, I'm a child care provider. I'm assuming she's also pregnant, because she says, can I apply for maternity leave insurance at the same time for EDD related COVID?
Maternity leave insurance?
Yeah, that's all she had. I'm sorry, I don't have enough.
Okay. If someone is out on maternity leave and they're with an employer that has 50 or more employees, they might be eligible for something like FMLA, which is the standard version of it, not the emergency version of it, which is actually specifically for when a child's school is closed. So for any other health reason, it would be covered under the regular FMLA. If you're with a smaller employer that's under that amount, you know, the only options you would have is, so your doctor might have you put on pregnancy disability leave. And so you can apply for that kind of disability insurance, it's pregnancy disability, where your job is protected for that period of time. And then afterwards, you can go to the paid family leave, which these are all through EDD, right? Those are the three that they do: unemployment, paid family leave, and disability. So you can do that for 6 weeks of baby bonding. Now, you can't have any of them at the same time, so it's one or the other. Actually, you may even get a little bit more with the disability and the paid family leave. They have a higher max, and so you know, yeah, if that's the case, then I don't know, if you're already on unemployment and you update that, you know, you would just have to contact EDD.
Just some bright news here. Someone said they had called, SBA has an 800 number at the bottom of their webpage. I spoke with them yesterday and they were extremely helpful, and they're open until 10 p.m. Yay. So thanks for sharing. There's a question about, does this also apply to nonprofits? Can nonprofits access these same resources?
Yes, they can. On my questions, yes. If they're doing PPP or I believe EIDL as well, that they as well can qualify if they're nonprofits, and churches as well.
Here is a lot of unemployment questions. If there are two family members who are also partners in the daycare, do they need to file unemployment of loss of work separately or together through their partnership?
It doesn't state anything about partnerships. If each of those people individually are affected by loss of income, then they can apply for unemployment. If they each have their own income out of the business. So I'm not sure if they're sort of what type of business they're listed as. So it's hard to say. Okay. But ideally, when you file for unemployment, it's just you as an individual.
I'm just going through here, and I think, oh, this is a long one. Let me see. I think that's it. I've gone through, I mean, everybody's asked pretty much the same questions, maybe just, you know, formatted in a different way. So Why don't we move on to the next screen, JJ? So we have put together a lot of resources for you guys, and we're going to share these with you. So first of all, let me thank everybody for all their responses. Hang on for just a little bit. But the slide that we put together, we've curated here, we'll share with you as soon as possible. Also, take out that phone and take a photo of that screen, because you can also Google these resources. We try to leave as much of the information in the screenshot, so that if you wanted to use Google, you could probably find them if you want to act on them immediately. I selected these resources because they have compiled many of the programs we've talked about in one location. They contain all the details, the instructions, and the links for the program applications. I also highlighted the Verizon LISC Fund because it's intended for entrepreneurs of color, women-owned businesses, and other businesses in historically underserved communities. And that describes us perfectly. So take a look at that. Now, I just want to let you know, when I went to look at the website, the applications for the first round of funding for the Verizon LISC Fund opened today and closed today. You had to get the application in by today. But they also said that there will be more rounds of funding. So definitely check it out. The Working Solutions list, they have a compilation of city-based funds. So check there to see if your city has an emergency fund which they've set up. And the U.S. Chamber of Commerce site, it had a really great checklist about documents you need and other things you need to get yourself ready to apply for different packages, and they had good information. I think one of the things that it didn't come up, but I just wanted to highlight is, as everyone has said, it's very fluid. Things are moving. You're gonna have to be really tenacious. I think Miles might have said it best, and also all of them, Darcy and Nathan, that you're going to have to be tenacious. You're gonna have to be aggressive. You're gonna have to be that squeaky wheel, and keep, just keep going and applying to as much as possible. Things are changing, and go back to the reason I put these sites up there, because they're going to be updating them much more efficiently and quickly than your R&Rs can do, or that First Five or anyone else can do. They're charged with keeping that information up to date. So I would just steer you to those resources and stay involved, stay connected, stay informed, because things are really, really changing rapidly. And I think that, there's a lot of good intention with some of these programs that have been put forth. But as Darcy said, and everybody else has said, the intention doesn't necessarily match up with the infrastructure that's already built. And it's uncovering all kinds of, oh, we didn't think about that. So just like the unemployment piece, go ahead and apply, and we hope they'll work those things out. Can you go to the next slide, JJ? I hope that this webinar has been helpful and that we answered many of your questions. I'm really, really deeply grateful to our panelists, and I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. This webinar was recorded, so feel free to share it with your childcare provider colleagues that were not able to join us today. I also want to let you know that my buddies Renee at 4Cs and Kelly at Hively, and the good people of First Five Alameda, Alameda County ECE Local Planning Council, the Alameda County Office of Education, Alameda County Public Health, and Alameda County Social Services, we've got your back, and we are really working hard to keep the child care providers and infrastructure in our county whole. Even yesterday, I learned of the National Women's Law Center is advocating for relief programs specifically for child care providers. Just before this webinar, on the resource page, we just added a link that we just found out about that is specifically for child care providers. So, like I said, stay informed because things are popping up every day. And I want to let you know that we're out there fighting for you on your behalf. We appreciate you all so very much each and every day. And please remember to take out a little time every day to practice self-care. So thanks so much. Thanks to our panelists. Thank you, child care providers. Take care. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. As you're exiting, please know that there is an evaluation that's coming at the end. If you have time, it's just going to pop up there for you. We really enjoy your feedback. We want to hear from you. Thank you so much. And thank you, guys, the panelists and our moderator, Kim.